All right, so I'm super happy to introduce Maša Jazbec. I go back with Maša a little bit because I was a visiting professor at the University of Scuba in the Empowerment Informatics program that was led and still is by Professor
All right,
Hiru
so
Iwata, who
I'm
is an
super happy to
engineer
introduce
and does
Maša
amazing,
Jazbec.
crazy robotics
I go
lectures.
back with Maša a little
So
bit
because
because I was a visiting
Maša
professor
already doing
at
her
the University of
PhD. She's
Scuba in
originally
the
from
Empowerment
Slovenia,
Informatics
and
program that was
I
led
was
and
advising
still
her this
is
side along
by
with
Professor
Dr.
Hiru
Hiru
so
Iwata,
I'm
who is an
super happy to
engineer
introduce
and does it actually was
Maša
an
Jazbec.
amazing time
I
because we
go
had
back
about
with
three,
Maša a
4
little bit.
years
There,
because
I
I
was
was
visiting
Maša already
professor
doing
at
her
the University of
PhD. She
Scuba in
originally
the
just had
Empowerment
Slovenia at
Informatics
that time,
program
and
that was
then
led
was
and
advising
still
her
is
this side along
by
with
Professor
also
Hiru
Dr.
Iwata,
Iwata,
so
who
I'm
is an
super happy to
engineer
introduce
and does it actually was
Maša
an
Jazbec.
amazing time
I
because we
go
had
back
about
with Maša a little
4
bit.
years
There,
because
I
not only
was
technologically
visiting
but also
professor
in this
at the
amazing
University of
relationship
Scuba was
disappears.
advising her
So,
side along by Professor
Alright,
Hiru
so
Iwata,
I'm
who is
super
an
happy to
engineer
introduce
and
it actually
Maša
was
Jazbec.
crazy
Robotics.
very
I
because
go
we had
back
about
with Maša a
4
little bit.
years
There,
just not
I
really
was
technologically
visiting
but also
professor
in this
at the
amazing
University of
relationship she
Scuba
this program. She's an artist and a curator and
was
disappears.
advising her
So
side
yeah,
along by Professor
alright,
Hiru
so
Iwata,
I'm
who is an
super happy to
engineer
introduce
and
it actually
Maša
was
Jazbec.
crazy
Robotics.
very
I go
because
back
we
with
had
Maša a little
4
bit.
years
There,
just not
I
really
was
technologically
visiting
but also
professor
in this
at the
amazing
University of
relationship
Scuba
she is
she's
also
an
really
artist and a
working and
curator
teaching and
and
then disappears.
advising her
So
side along by Professor Hiru
so
Iwata,
I'm
who is an
super happy to
engineer
introduce
and
appreciate you creating a whole uh, lecture that's not just about your work, but also about how you frame it and how you see it as a researcher. And in particular, your relationship with androids, I find fascinating. Welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for such a nice introduction. And of course, thank you for the invitation. It's my real pleasure to lecture about the robotics. A few years ago, I was also lecturing at UCLA about robotics, so I'm happy to be back, of course, with more news about the robotics. Yeah, as Victoria already mentioned, in Slovenia, I'm also curating a new media art festival, Speculum Artium, where I actually focused on the robotics. So for some years, we really were like hosting so many world-known robotics projects such as Honda from Asimov from Honda, Ishiguro, Stellark, and many, many more. But this for me was just the platform, you know, where I was able to invite other artists and scientists who are working with robots. But then I wanted to move forward. And of course, I moved to Japan to do a PhD. But there is also an interesting story behind this, why I went for a PhD. Because I did a master at Interface Culture in Linz with Krista Sommerer. And during my studies there, I was already able to go to do the internship at Yamas. And of course, there I was introduced already by Shiguro. I had the pleasure to visit his laboratory. So he demonstrated me all the robots, all the androids that they have. And of course, then I got back to Linz and I said to Krista, my mentor, my professor, and now colleague, I want to come back to Japan. So I was looking for some art residencies, but it was really difficult to find a long one. So then Krista suggested to me, Maša, you should do a PhD. And I said, PhD, I'm just finishing my master. I don't know if I'm ready, you know, for another writing process, actually. But then the wish, you know, to enter to robotics laboratories, to have also some physical experiences, not just in theory about robotics, I decided I will do it. Because unfortunately, it's very difficult for artists to enter these scientific laboratories where they are developing robots. Especially for artists, it's really hard. So you actually have to be a PhD student to do that. So now you understand. So that's why I decided to do a PhD, because the PhD actually opened the doors so I was able to research about robots. So, okay, let's just continue with the lecture. So I will share my slides with you. You can see it, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and why I'm interested in robotics, because I think for the time of immemorial, human was fantasizing how to give a spark of life to artificial human body or any other artificial entity. And the manner in which such fantasies were actually manifested was depending on the technological development of the period that the human lived. So many times I also say, just check the robots of each period, and then you can see how technological advanced the society was at that time. But not just about technology, but also about ethics and humanities as well. Because then you can see why humans are building robots and where are these robots used. And this tells a lot about ourselves as well. And also when building robots, we learn a lot about ourselves and also about our body and also about the nature mechanisms behind it. So you can actually see how wide the topic of robotic is. So it's art, it's many sciences, it's engineering, it's ethics, philosophy, design, just name it. And also all the new technologies that they came out are right away grabbed by robotics engineers, researchers, and they are implementing all this into the robotics. But I would also like to point out that the first ideas of robots were manifested by artists. So it was like in books, comics, and in films. And then those ideas of robots manifested also in the research laboratories. Because when I talked with robot developers, with robot researchers, they are always referring to artists, especially from books and comics. So they were inspired by artists, actually. And now today also we can see that all these robots that come from artist idea to the robot research laboratories, today these robots are leaving the laboratories and are already among us. So I always, when I talk about robots, I'm saying not that we always say robots are coming, not, robots are already here, but we are just not so aware of it. So as I said, that first ideas of robots or artificial life in these artificial bodies were manifested by artists. So here we can also see the golem. It's the book, and then also the movie. It was already in 1920 by the German movie directors. They actually got life into this humanoid form out of clay. And then it's from 9020, it's the science fiction play by Karel Čapek. Karel Čapek wrote the scenario, and also then he directed the play. And in this play, it was the first time used the word robot. So you can see also the word robot was coined by artists. And this was in 1920, and then years later, in 1972, was the first time the word robot used also in the scientific definition. And of course, when we talk about artists' vision about robots, we cannot miss Isaac Asimov, who wrote like many books, and also many books were also manifested in the movies. And he wrote also very important 3 laws of robotics, which are also used in robotics laboratories nowadays. Researchers are referring to those 3 laws of robotics. Unfortunately, I have to say that not all of them, but let's hope that they will, because these 3 laws are very important, especially now that, like I will show you later, that robots are leaving the laboratories that are already in the society among us. And here I have put also the cover of the book, The Robots of the Dawn, which is very interesting for me, especially nowadays, because it's describing the society Solaria, which are the aliens or human aliens that are living in the planet Solaria, which are actually living like we today in the time of epidemic. The hygiene level is very high. They have to all the time clean everything, and how they live. They don't have human contact among them. They live in big houses alone, and they communicate with each other only via holograms or something like Zoom and Skype. And who works for them are the robots. So like it was said many times, that artists kind of predicted the future. So just think of where we are today, like there is also a saying nowadays, and many articles have been out, like first things happened in the science fiction movie and then they are reality. The robots among us are already a reality, and now we can also see this. There were so many movies about the viruses, and look at us now, how we live. And of course, during my lecture, I will refer a lot to Japanese approach to it. And of course, we cannot go without comics and manga. And there is like an Astro Boy or Atom Boy. It's a very famous comic story, which started in 1951 by Osamu Tezuka. It's still very popular in Japan and also worldwide. And of course, Ghost in the Shell. It's also, I think everyone should have read it. It's very interesting, the comics, and also later also the anime, because it's cyberpunk, and you can see some graphs, some stories that are actually very relevant today. But the comics and robots, of course, are not only in Japan, it's worldwide, especially also in Europe, in France. For example, Moebius, he was also a genius in predicting the future of robots. And he was also like writing the storyboard for many movies. And actually, this comic that he put together, The Long Tomorrow, that was actually very much inspiring for the movie directors such as Ridley Scott. Actually, the many scenes from this comic inspired him to do the Blade Runner. And here is also another very interesting comics. It's the Meta Barons. And the story is written by a very recognized movie director, Alejandro Jodorowsky. Jodorowsky was actually the one who was the first one to plan to do the movie Dune, which we are very excited to see the new one, hopefully this year. But then David Lynch made it. But first idea was to do it by Alejandro Jodorowsky. And he was actually the one who invited the Geiger, who did like the visuals for the also very famous science fiction movie Alien. He introduced him to Hollywood and then later to Ridley Scott. So there is also, you can see like many interesting stories also behind it. And I think to the more general audience, the robotics is mostly introduced through science fiction movies. That also happened to me. When I was a child in kindergarten already, I watched with my father together the movies such as Alien and Blade Runner. And especially Blade Runner kind of stayed in my mind because as a kid, I could not figure out what are these androids, or in this movie, they are called replicants, because they don't look like robots and they are not humans. What are they? And they bleed and they had emotions. I was really confused already that time because I could not figure out where to place them. They are not pets, not humans, not robots. They are actually a new species that we don't actually have an ontological name for them or how to place it in our society, not even nowadays. And of course, when we talk about robots and movies, we cannot skip the Metropolis. It's a movie from 1927. And here in this movie was first time introduced the female robot. And here you can see I have put some images of different, different robots, humanoid robots, androids, and replicants from the cult movies of science fiction. And the one that's really iconic speech from the movie about robots, androids. It's this story. It's this, but the end, this talk about from the replicant Roy Batty, and we can at the end see how human actually see. And here we can ask ourselves, where are we? You know, why the robots in this movie are showing more humanity and emotions than humans self. And just recently, you can also see on the Netflix and HBO a lot of series about the androids, about the robots. This is from this image is from the Raised by the Wolves. Also, this was partly directed by Ridley Scott. And it's also very interesting because I really like the way how Ridley Scott is introducing the robots to us, because he goes really deep. He really questions humanity and what is the future of humans with living with robots. He really goes deep, not just about the violence and, you know, seeing robots as just something really as a threat to us, but he goes really deep that we have to question also our origin, especially in this series. Now I have briefly introduced some robots from books, comics, and science fiction movies. And now I would like to introduce you the robots that are already here among us in our society. Of course, everyone, I think, is familiar with the Boston Dynamics robots because they are the stars of YouTube. And just recently, again, they striked with this robot dance. It took them 6 months to develop this robotics choreography that the robots dance. And it was a lot of people working on it, programmers, and as well, they invited also artists. For the choreography was actually done together with the dancer. And for me, it's really interesting, you know, their approach. Now they want to go commercial, but they are still investing so much time, you know, in things like learning robots to dance. But then if you talk with them, it's also interesting how they say, because when they are, you know, learning the robots to do such movements, they also learn about humans. And also they do a lot of robots where they are robots mimicking animals. So they study a lot of animals, you know, how the animals moves. And then they are trying to replicate all this to animals, to robots. And we can learn how difficult it is actually, you know, how much time it would take, you know, to human to learn to dance, you know. For human, this is still very easy movements, but we can see that to robots, it's still very far. It's still very, it's not so easy. And here I would like to share the atlas, the humanoid robot atlas. This one is not commercial available yet. And you can see how he sees us. He's wearing several 360 cameras, so he's constantly scanning the environment around it. And then they program here also like the algorithms. So you actually control the robot with the joystick, but only the direction, you know, go straight, left, right, or back. All the other things, the robot decides by itself. So here you can see these green steps. He predicts, he sees, and then he will jump exactly on these steps. And this is not controlled in advance. It's just, it happens in real time. And what is also interesting how they did it, because this robot can also act also in not predictable environment. So this robot can walk outside of the laboratory. It can walk on the ground, on rocks, because it's adjusting the balance in real time. And I'd like to introduce you to the robot Spot. It's a Spot dog. And this one is commercial available already. And they're using it in many places. Here you can see in the mind, which is the deepest mine in the world, and it's really difficult for humans to go and to monitor some of the things there, so they are sending the robots there. So okay, this is example of the smart use of the robot here. And here you can also see that also artists are already grabbing and wants to work with such robots, but unfortunately it's really hard to get to these robots. So now we can see that the Ito Manabe, the Japanese artist, media artist, it's exploring the possibilities in using such robot in art. So I think like in a few months, we're gonna see some robotic art projects also with such robots. Yes, here is another test that they were experimenting with it, like did the teleconference using the Spot robots. And now let's go here, where robots are really in unpredictable place outdoor in the public space. So in Singapore, they are testing this Spot robot to be kind of he is like the robot is walking in parks, and it's reminding the people now during COVID situation to keep distance. So with the camera, he's scanning, and if the people are too close, not wearing mask, it gives right away a notice that they should keep the distance. And if this is going to be successful, then they're gonna use such robots in parks, in public places. And another example of using Boston Dynamics spot, it's also in New York. New York Police Department is also testing robots outdoor in the public spaces in unpredictable places. And this is the thing that I was scared most, that they're going to use it in army. Because actually Boston Dynamics was, of course, first founded by military, but then they separated from the military, and they said that they don't want to develop robots for the military anymore. So then Google bought them, and then from Google, the Japanese company SoftBank bought them. That was really a surprise for me. Because we know the Japanese, they are really against using technology in military. And I was really surprised that then they bought the Boston Dynamics robots, which is like on the top of military technology advancement. But they did it. And then also now SoftBank also kind of drop of it. Because this kind of research is it's not so commercial yet, and it's not bringing a lot of money. So they also sold it, and now it's owned, Boston Dynamics is now owned by Hyundai, which is a Korean company. And also Boston Dynamics, they stated that their robots will never use the weapons. So I don't know how can they promise us that. So I think we really need to talk about ethics and use of such robots also in the places where they are developing it. And there should be like a law that they really should not allow it to use it for army and such things. And now beside Boston Dynamics, there is also another company. It's called Ghost Robotics, and they are only developing robots for the military purpose. And now let's also talk about the robots, humanoid robots that are also already among us. This is the company Hands-on Robotics. They developed the very also famous female robot Sophia. And the CEO of the company, David Hanson, he is actually an artist. His background is in sculpturing. So from sculpturing, he was studying animatronics, and now he is also one of the most advanced researcher and developer of humanoid robots. They develop several humanoid robots, but the most recognizable is the Sophia. And Sophia, she's also a star. She's invited in many also like presentations, talks, and she did also the presentation of herself in Saudi Arabia, where they also gave her a passport. So she is the first humanoid robot that got her passport. And that was really very shocking thing. And because you know how it's in Saudi Arabia and how females are treated there. In that time when Sophia got the passport, females were not allowed to do the driving license. So if you can compare these things, it's really strange. And now this is what I also said at the beginning. When we have robots in our society, and how we treat them also tells us about ourselves. So it's not the robot blame, but it's on us. So here you can see the Sophia on one of her many media appearances. They are developing her also AI. And here is the Robotics. This is the company. I think it's located in San Francisco. And lately, there have been a lot of articles about sex robots. and they are the one who are producing sex robots. So it's not just dolls, because they are upgraded also with some AI and also with possibilities to move. And here we also have to question ourselves, you know. I will not here blame the robots, you know, but it's again on us. We have to ask ourselves, what went wrong with our society that so many people, so many humans can be more close and more intimate with the robots than with humans. And of course, there is also in Japan a company that is producing androids, as well. Ishiguro androids, which I will talk later, were also fabricated in this company. But this company, I think it's the first one. It's the first company that is actually producing androids to commercially. And very sophisticated androids as well, like I mentioned, Ishiguro androids were here, and this company is also working with many researchers and scientists, you know, like from researchers and scientists from skin materials, from pneumatic systems, and artists, you know, because for their appearances and abilities. But I'm also missing in all this, like the ethics. Is there some kind of, you know, small text or something about the ethics? Because how these robots are changing our society. Here you can see from the same company. Just excuse me, I have to take some water. And of course, when we talk about humanoid robots and androids, we should also expose the Disney Research Laboratory, because they are also very advanced in animatronics. Especially if you maybe visited Disneyland, you can see they're really advanced robots called animatronics, and very advanced, but they are more like for the how to say, like for the show. But you can see it depends where you place the robot, you know, in which concept, and of course each concept then brings different kind of story. Right. And as I mentioned, like during the presentation, that we really should also put out the ethic issues, because when we are building these robots that are not just in the laboratories, but enter in our private life, public life, we for sure should rethink the fundamental values, which are, of course, with the presence of robots in our society, very questioned. And not just with robots, but also with the AI. And in Italy, they already started like to have some ethics discussions. Also in the Vatican, in 2019, they actually initiated the Robotics conference, which is taking place, I think it's every year since 2019, where they are invited actually like robotics researchers, and then the philosophers, and of course the priests, the Pope, and ethics philosophers to discuss about the ethics. I can say that also, like, for example, they invited Ishiguro to present his research and his views on the research, and why is he developing such human-like robots, and why he wants them to be part of our society. They are actually in Vatican, they have such discussions. And it was also very interesting for me. It was mentioned, you know, like the Honda Robotics, who they developed the most advanced humanoid robot, Asimo. actually they went to Vatican to discuss and also for their kind of blessing if they are on the right way to continue developing such robotics. Is there any questions until now before I continue with the Android science?
Let's see if the students want to question or comment, or maybe from the assistants, teaching assistants.
I have a question. Along the lines of humanoid robots, I was wondering if there's any kind of a disclaimer that has to be put out, because eventually, and even now, not with visual robots, but in terms of like robots answering the phone, it's very difficult, if it could be impossible to distinguish if it's a human or a robot. What are the ethic implications of that? Should we be like labeling our robot calls, or in the future our humanoid robots, similar to how we label our GMO foods?
Yeah, for sure it should be. They already, I think, when you are online or on the computer, and if on the other side that you are talking, it should be defined that you are talking with a chat bot, that you are not actually talking with a human. You should know that. You should have the right to know. They should put it somewhere that you are not talking to the real person, but to the artificial, to the AI actually. But for the robots like that, you know, physical robots, there is not such thing yet, because I think we are not ready for that. I think it's happening so fast now for the last few years, maybe 4 or 5 years, that we didn't establish the rules for that yet, because we still don't know where to place those robots yet. And I think we really need not just discussions about it, but really to do something about it, not just talk it, because I'm afraid that it's going to be too late soon. And that's why we should also give this awareness, I think, more also to maybe to schools, and already start teaching about robots already in primary school and in high school, especially in primary school, because like now it's very popular also to have these social robots, small social robots. Also Alexa, it can be like a robot, because I don't think that children also understand what this is and what kind of a relationship they're going to build toward it. And for that point of view, I really recommend to read and to listen to Sherry Turkle. She's a researcher, and she's also researching and also pointing out this relationship that children are actually building with such social robots, because they are not just toys, they are more than that.
And Jamie is asking if the current robots can pass the Turing test.
Until now, not the total Turing test, but some they can. I will show also later, because Professor Ishiguro, he did like the Turing test in public with one of his androids. And the interesting thing is actually that the robot almost passed it.
Yeah. Almost. And Joseph is asking how you could implement worldwide accepted ethics on robotics manufacturing. We've been trying to do this with genetic engineering, and the ethics don't seem to stop the outliers. And this is actually true with genetic engineering. It's just been like this battle to get people informed.
Yeah, also with the robotics, it's very difficult. And it's also very difficult, how I would say, because we in the West and then Japan, especially the Asian countries, they have totally different approach to robotics and to technology in general, which it also goes very deep also to their religion. In Japan, the Shinto and the Buddhism, they believe that everything has life, that life is in the rock, life is in the car, of course, then life is also in the robot. So they don't see robots as a threat, but they already recognize it as a new species among us. So it's going to be very, very, very difficult to do that, but we have to do it. We have to do it for sure.
And Himal is asking you, why do robots express visual gender?
Yeah, that's also a very good question. Like I showed you before, the commercial robots, especially for robotics, of course, they are producing female robots because the market wants them. And that's why I like this robot that you can see here on this picture, because this robot doesn't have a gender, because it doesn't need it. I think that the robot really should not have a gender. But the way it's also in our minds, because we want to, to put everything into our human measure. We are creating our world in our measure. That's why we are also reflecting this in robots.
And Rafaela wants to know, at which point in advancement of robot intelligence do the robots have rights?
The robots don't have rights yet. It's also this they are discussing a lot. Once the robot is going to be, really living with us, what kind of rights will we give to the robot? And but there was also a discussion if we should tax robots, because the robot can do so much more in industry than human, and now there is also there are some initials that also the robots should be taxed. So you can see how many questions you have, and that actually there is no answers to these questions yet.
But maybe there is an answer to Megan's question of robots versus AI. Where do they merge, and what relationship do they have, and what, in the future, what will the relationship be with AI? I guess this is Takashi's research, right?
Yeah, when they will really combine a robot with AI, yeah, this is going to really be like a game changer for us, for sure. Because for now, the limit for the robots, the limitation is the hardware. Actually, it's still the mobility and also the energy. I mean, the battery. This is kind of the kind of the problem, or how to say, the challenge. To merge together the AI, the software with the hardware. It's very complicated. I learned this also when I was at the Shiguro laboratory, how it's really difficult to merge that. And from that point of view, we can also learn, from us humans, because when I was at the Shiguro lab and exploring the robotics there, I really learned so much about our body and how special our body is, that it's really, really difficult to replicate it.
And then you have one more complex question about the semantics and the reasoning abilities of the robot. Is it bound to semantics of language? Is language a removable assumption which limits all reasoning abilities? And in that case, is it true and free reasoning possible for AI, let alone humans? So that's a deeply philosophical question that Krish poses. But maybe you can address at least the idea of semantics and language. I mean, when you're dealing with Japanese culture versus the Western culture in robotics, there must be a difference in how the responses are.
Yes. Of course, like we the Western world, of course, we are very always we show this fear to robots. We have really like negative projections into it. While in Japan, especially in Japan, it's totally the opposite. So it has, when it comes to robots, of course, it's very important also the background, the cultural background.
And last question is from Taylor. In what sector have robots been found to be most productive? Is there a reasonable timeline for seeing robots integrated into our households?
Yes, we already have some robots in our house. You know, they are not in a human shape, but it's like the vacuum cleaner, and also other machines also can be considered as robots. So they are already implemented in our house. But to have a humanoid robot, it's gonna take still some time. But the robots, such I show you Spot, you know, you can already buy it, and it can be helpful in the house. That one, yes.
All right, so I think we can continue. You can see that you've generated a lot of questions, which is always wonderful.
Yeah. Okay, and now I would like to come to the Android science. Androids, these are human-like machine robots, but there must be made a distinction between the robots and androids, because robots kind of stand for a capitalist engineering of optimizing the economic interests, while the androids introduce some kind of a new meaning and an added value to the field of robotics. Because Android science actually it's combining many different fields. It's from also art, and also lots of a lot of cognitive science, as well as material science, design, engineering, and also ethic philosophies and semantics. It's everything in it. And actually Android science is also a very established science field already. The pioneer of Android science is Professor Ishiguro, and he kind of coined that word, this Android science, in 2005. Here you can also see the Android Erika, which I will also introduce her later. And here you can see the process of building the Android. In this process, it's very interdisciplinary project. It's many people from different fields are creating Android science androids. So here you can see how the artists, the sculptors, are making the mold of the Professor Ishiguro. Here you can see the Professor Ishiguro, and here is the process, how they are making the android. He actually also coined the term Geminoid android. Android is like the robot that is made out of human appearance, but the Geminoid is the copy of the real person. And he did like many copies of persons, and of course he did also the copy of himself, like his mechanical twin. And even in his hair of the android are his real hair. And he is also very specific, how to say, and he really goes all the way into his research. You know, like many times we say that like there is like a really thin line between a genius and a madman, because he's very obsessed about the robot appearance. He wants to make a perfect copy of the human and a perfect copy also of himself. And now I can also share a little story from behind. For example, he had developed many copies of himself, and he has a problem now because he is getting old and his androids are not. So he actually is taking some Botox injections to keep him younger, so that he will be more looked like a robot, because for him it's cheaper that he do the operations on himself than to do another robot head. And here you can see how realistic he's developing the android, and they are also very much focused also on the face expressions. There is like many motors also under the silicone skin, you know, that they represent the really, they can really mimic human face, human muscles. So really almost perfect. It's quite, it's very interesting to see that. And there is also a lot of material science behind it to develop like a really perfect skin for such androids. So here you can see one of his copy. On the left is the Ishiguro, and on the right side you can see one of his copies, Geminoid. And as mentioned before about the Turing test, he did this experiment at Ars Electronica in 2009. Actually, that was the first time that he introduced his research, his androids, to outside of Japan, I think. Especially in Europe, it was for the first time for sure. And for everyone, this was like mind-blowing. You know, what is this happening? Is this really, you know? And this is at Ars Electronica, and on the top of Ars Electronica, it's like a coffee bar, and he placed the android there in front of the computer and testing if the people recognized that there is a robot. And we have to say that he did also the research. I think he also published a research paper about it, and the robot almost passed it. Okay, the robot looked a bit junk and like a bit strange, but some people thought, oh, it's just like maybe some introvert Japanese in front of the computer, you know, making some strange movements, but most of them didn't even think that this is a robot. So we can say that this one actually have passed the Turing test, but just visually, when it comes to discussion, even those robots, they can be teleoperated. Because then he also left the robot in Linz, and Ishiguro traveled back to Japan, and he was then teleoperating the robot from Japan and observing, of course, the reactions of the people. He is really studying humans and also how we react when we are close to the android, and he gets really upset when we said that no, this robot, we see that it's a robot. This robot, it will never pass the Turing test. He really gets obsessed about it. And here I'm sharing with you one of the first androids that he built, and this was in 2005. This was modeled by the TV reporter. He made a copy of her. And nowadays in Japan, you can see such androids in shopping malls at the info point. So you go there, and instead of the real person, you can see the android there, and you can communicate with the touch screen. It's quite common in Japan in shopping.
Actually, we need to consider the.
And I was really also fascinated when I saw in 2009 the Geminoid at Ars Electronica, because before I didn't know of Ishiguro research. I was really not aware of it. And like I mentioned, that I was really into Blade Runner movie, you know. For me, when I saw this in 2009, I was like, what? this is almost like Blade Runner, and it's these robots exist. This kind of research existed, and since then, you know, I was following Ishiguro work. I also wrote about it in my bachelor already. And then I also invited Ishiguro to present his robots to our festival in Trbovlje in Slovenia. And I was really, really amazed by his positive response, because that was in 2013, and that time he was really already very famous robotics. And I was thinking he will not come to Trbovlje, to really small mining town in Slovenia. And at that time, even Speculum Artium was not a recognized festival. But he said yes, and he came. And that time I saw that he is really passionate about his research, and that he really wants to share his research and his research views, androids, to broader audience, not to be stayed only in academic circles, because he is very recognized also in the academic circles. And I also don't like that this research would be only in the academic circle. Not so many people will get to know about it. And if they're making for society, I think everyone should know it. And that's why I really appreciated that he really shared his research worldwide, and that he was really, that he came also to Trbovlje, to Slovenia, and introducing the robots for 3 days, every day, giving a demonstration also to children, to artists, and also like a lot of scientists, engineers came that year. And that was also for our festival, that was kind of a breakthrough, that we also got like the international recognition. And one of the application of the androids that they are developing is also archiving humans. Now, this sounds really weird, but it's in Japan, for example, they have the tradition of the rakugo storytelling. The rakugo is like that all Japanese are telling funny stories. And there was like a Beicho, really famous one. And when he was dying already, actually the family asked Ishiguro laboratory if they can make a copy of him, and they did it. And now this is the national treasure. And now the real Beicho passed, and now the robot is continuing this story. And I was really lucky that I had the opportunity to see in person this robot. I have to say that this robot really looked realistic. It could also pass the Turing test, because the skin is really of all these wrinkles, and it really looks like real. From 1 meter, you could not distinguish. But they are not allowed to show it often, because it's a national treasure, and it's also owned by the family, and they are very strict where or when to show it. And also another project that I would like to share with you about androids, it's Android Theater, the play called Sayonara. This was done together with Oritsa Hirata. He's a recognized theater director in Japan. And they together did an Android theater called Sayonara. And the story is like, there is like a girl, and she got a disease and she's dying. And in this process of dying, a family bought her a robot. And the robot, so that the girl is not alone, and the robot is reading her poetry. And the robot and the girl are talking about death and God and religion. And what was fascinating for me was that this was in 2011 represented at Ars Electronica Festival, but the thing is where it was represented, it was in the church. So in the church, under the roof of God, the robot and the human were discussing about death. So that was really very deep and emotionally very, very strong, you know, like. I think it's also, now you can see how Android science is approaching to robots, that it goes really deep and it's really questioning our origin in the way, and our religion, our beliefs as well, humanity in general. And later on, they also made a movie. And what is interesting in this movie, that the play was already written for the robot. So this robot is here, and usually it goes like they made a story and then they wrote a script, and they, after the script, they build the robot. But this was, the script was already prepared for the robot who already existed. And another interesting implementation of androids in society in Japan, of course, it's also a priest. It's called Mindar. And you can see this android Mindar. It's now in Kyoto in the temple, Kodai, and it's giving like pranks. So the monks are praying together with this android. You can also attend these sessions, you know. So, and it's for real. The Buddhists actually accepted him as not a person, but like a new entity, you know, new ontological being. For them, it's not just a robot, but it's a new species. And same kind of robot, Alter, this is also a very interesting project for me. Here it's done with Ishiguro and also with Ikegami laboratory. Takashi Ikegami, and he is investigating life, artificial life, and Ishiguro androids, and here they really combine their research, their knowledge, their vision, and they created this installation, Alter, and the Alter here, it's actually sensing the environment. There is many sensors around it, like it's for humidity, temperature, light, and also the camera sense the humans when human presence, and also all that is implemented in the Android algorithm. Actually, they created kind of a lifelike movement like that. So when we come close, the robot starts to move, and these movements are not prepared in advance. So they never know how the robot is going to react. And sometimes the robot also gives some voice. And the researchers behind, they don't know what does this mean. And they are also questioning if this robot is going to develop some sort of language. And my wish was also to do some experiments with such robots, because you can see that this robot doesn't have a pre-given identity, doesn't have a gender, a race, you know, and I also like that you can see all the mechanical body. So it's not hiding what it is. It shows that is a machine, that is an Android robot. And here I would like also briefly mention the Erika. It's one of the latest Android robots from Ishiguro Laboratory. And it's a conversational robot. Here on the right, you can see all the motors that she has in her face. And they are building also her algorithms to have intention. So they also kind of make kind of a slide where they can, in advance, they can put, you know, how much will she learn about the person, or she will talk about herself. This they can set, but then the conversation goes how it goes, you know. And it's this, you can see her mind behind how it looks, and here. And also here, because it's very difficult to write algorithms about intention, to give the robot intentions. And I have to say that it's a very special feeling when you are around her, because I had the opportunity to be present while they were making her mind, creating her mind. I was there at a couple of sessions. And when you talk with her, she follows you. Her eye movements are following you. It's really strange feeling when the robot gives you back the eye contact. And when you introduce to her, when you tell her your name, she remembers your name. And during the conversation, she will go back to you like, so Maša, what kind of movies do you like? So Maša, what is in your country, Slovenia, popular and stuff? So she remembers some words about you, and it can be really, it's quite a strong feeling when the robots actually goes back to you. It's such a, referring your name, giving you eye contact. And all this is done at the Advanced Telecommunication Research Institute International, ATR, in Kyoto in Japan, where I had the pleasure to be a guest researcher during my PhD studies in Tsukuba. And there I had a pleasure to work with such androids. And what I wanted to do was the body swapping experiment. Here I can also refer to the story behind the ghost in the shell. I was interested if I can transfer my body ownership to a robot. And I was inspired here by Henrik Ehersson research. He was one of the first who did this body swapping experiment, where he was able to transfer one human perception to a body perception to another. So he did this among humans, and he did this also with a mannequin doll. And then I was also inspired by that when I had the chance to test this by Machine to Be Another, is the Art Science Collective, who actually brought this experiment from Ehersson, which was always in the laboratory, not people were not able to test it, but it's super interesting. So they brought this to outdoor, to art festival platforms. And it was mind blowing for me to test it and to see how we can actually, with some simple tricks, really achieve the body ownership illusion. And this is also like the study of brain plasticity. It's that. So I wanted to do the body ownership transfer to the android. And I did this with the Geminoid HI2. And here you can see the kinesthetic. I chose this robot because the robot can move all the body. All these numbers, you can see here, all these are joints, are the artificial muscles. The robot has 50 degrees of freedom, and it's controlled by the Xbox controller. And the robot it moves by an air compressor, like the pneumatic actuators, which make them very silent, and the movements are really smooth. It's not like a robot, but it makes really almost like human, the movements of the hands. So to achieve that, I placed the camera on the place where the robot's eyes are. So here, this is the robot, yeah, actually. And okay, first, of course, we tested it many times. Also, Ishiguro tested it a lot of times. Here is Ishiguro doing the body ownership transfer with his own copy. And this is how we did it. So here on the right, on the small square, you can see what I see in the goggles, because then the vision from the camera was streamed into the Oculus. And the Oculus gyro was also connected with the robot head. So how the robot moved the head, I could see it, or how I moved the head, the robot followed the movement. Here you can see how we designed the experiment. And first we put the curtains so the participants could not see themselves actually, so they could not see the robot there. So when they put the goggles on, instead of their own body, when they looked down, they saw the android body. They saw like the android hands, they should be their own. It was quite really shocking for them, because there I should see my hands, but now I see the android hands. And then to achieve like the body ownership illusion, it's like kind of a simple protocol. You have to touch the participant and the robot on the same spot, you know, because when they see the robot, and then when they also feel the hand that is touching the robot, and at the same time also the real leg, then the body ownership illusion is almost there. It's really fascinating, you know, in just few minutes, they could feel the robot as their own body. So it was actually a very successful experiment. Most of the people really felt the android body as their own. And then we wanted to test as well the agency. If the agency can be as well transferred. The agency, if I simplify it, is if I made this gesture, I know it's my agency. I'm doing it. And now we wanted to test if the robot moves, and if also when it's moving, that I can also feel, that they could also feel that the robot arm is there, the robot body is there. And for some time also that they could feel it. But when we removed the curtains, it was also another weird thing, you know, because they in front of themselves, they could see their own body. And when they looked down, they saw the Geminoid, the android body. And then we asked them a question if they can point with the finger to themselves. And most of the participants, for a few seconds, they didn't know where they are. They were pointing there, I'm there, no, but I cannot show myself there. And then here, but here, it's not me. I see the android body. So for a few seconds, they were really confused. They really didn't know where to localize themselves. And also when they saw themselves, the sense of agency in the robot fell down. But then another interesting thing that happened, because then we also give them the instructions to move towards them and to touch themselves. We asked them to move the hands really slowly, because with the joystick I had to follow the participant movement, so the robot did as much similar movements as the participant. And the interesting things happen when it comes to touch, because a lot of participants they said that they have a really new sensation, because they feel that they are touching and that they are touched at the same time, and their brains kind of could not process this new sensation. You know, it was like the vision was strict, the haptics was strict, and then later on we also continue research, and we were focused only on the touch. Here you can see how I was able to move the robot. And here, like I mentioned, that a really interesting thing happened with the touch, And okay. Here I also can show with you a video of it. Mm-hmm. So this is how you actually saw, yeah. I have to say, this experiment was very popular in the laboratories, so we had to demonstrate it many times. Also, when they had visitors from outside, we demonstrated them this experiment. but unfortunately I could not bring this experiment and outdoor, or to the art festival platforms, because they don't move this robot from the laboratory. Not anymore. They moved it only once, because behind this robot it's a big machinery. It's kind of a really huge compressor. It's a huge compressor because to control many air actuators, because you can see it has it in a whole body. So unfortunately, this experiment stayed. I was able to show it only in the laboratory. And here briefly, I can show the results. Because we published papers about it, and I represented this in many conferences, also a conference on human-robot interaction. So you can see like that lots of participants actually were convinced that they felt the android body as their own. And here are some of the very interesting statements from the participants who tested the experiment. And for the experiment, the participants were invited from outside of the laboratory. They were not familiar with the robot or with the experiment, so that we could get the data that we could analyze to do a scientific research out of it. And then I moved on. I wanted to do another experiment. And in this experiment, I wanted to do the face swap. First, I did the face swap with my colleagues at the university. They were mostly Japanese and males, and they did the face swap with me. And of course, the experiment didn't work out. The body ownership illusion did not work, because on my face, you can see the age, the race, the gender, and this is one thing. And the other thing is also, how our brains recognize faces. We know that one part in our brains is responsible only for face recognition, while one system runs, to recognize a house, a dog, a tree. It's one system, but for the face recognition is really a special process running in our head. So I was really, okay, can I do this with with a robot maybe that doesn't have face features? So I did with the telenoid robot, and the telenoid robot doesn't have age. On the face, you cannot see the age, the gender, and also cannot see the race. And here was that was the experiment scenario. Again, I put the camera in front of the eyes of the robot, which was in real time streamed into the Oculus again, and I put the mirror in front of them. And of course, they could not see, they were not able to see the robot. They came to the experiment room, and they could see just the mirror in front of them. I asked them, can you look in the mirror before we start the experiment? They did, looked, and then when they put the goggles on, all of a sudden, same mirror, but they could not see their own face anymore, but they saw the robot face. Also, in this case, the robot head and the Oculus were synced. So the way I moved the head, the participant moved the head as well, the robot did. And here, yeah, you can see what actually how it looked, what they saw. When they put the goggles, instead their own face, they saw this, and this face was moving according to their movements. As well, here we did some protocols to achieve the face illusion transfer. We manipulated senses with haptics, tactile stimuli, with touching, vibration, and poking the face. And this was touching the face, and here was the poking with the stick. Here they did not move any of their body part; they were just observing themselves in the mirror. So here you can see all the free stages that we had, 3 different stimuluses. And one of the most successful, where we achieved the face ownership illusion, was with the stick. When they did not move, when they were just receiving the touch, they got it. 90% of the participants, they stated after that yes, this face in the mirror, I perceive it as mine. I feel it as mine. When here was the touch, because with the touch we also have agency, it was not working so well, as well not with others with the vibration. But when it comes only with touching with the stick on the same spot as the robot, as their face, and with same speed, like you can see here, this was working. And so we also achieved the body ownership illusion with the face. And here I can share some results, and you can see with the poking, with the touching, how high actually it was compared to others. And there they are also running the experiments and research for Android for rehabilitation, where you can manipulate, can control the robot with your brainwaves only. Here I was for the first time testing by myself the brain-computer interface systems and devices. And here I'm moving, actually I was moving the head of the Android only with my thoughts. We did a short calibration, so they calibrated which part of my brain gets activated when I'm thinking that I'm moving the head. And then this was then in real time sent to the Android, and the Android was really moving the head. And here we did the same with the hand. For some parts I was like imagining that I'm moving the hand and the robot was moving the hand, and then I was also actually moving the hand and the Android was moving the hand. And now, of course, the question is like, I'm an artist, and how to show this experiment and this research that I did at Ishiguro laboratory with androids, if I cannot take this experiment out to the general audience, you know, only at the conference, but conference, like I mentioned, it was like academic circle. So this is how I'm now sharing my experiments results, and also the awareness of the Android science and robotics. Because when I show this at exhibitions, these videos, and also I made like, I documented the robots and experiments with the Polaroid camera. So I made kind of a science diary with these images. And when visitors come and see this exhibition, they are really, some are fascinating, some are shocking, because they cannot believe how advanced the robotic science is, that this is not in science fiction movies, it's not just in Blade Runner and such movies, but it's here, it's already happening. And that this branch of research, like Android science, is actually taking really seriously. So this is also another example how I'm showing the Android experiments that I did with the wider public. And now, since October 2019, we were able to establish the DDT laboratory. And DDT laboratory is a platform. It's a laboratory where we are producing projects that are on the crossroads with art, science, new technologies, and also economy. So we established 3 labs, brain computer lab, VR lab, and robotics lab. So like I mentioned, it's a platform for art, science, tech, and also education. This is also very important to us, because we are showing also the latest robotic advances, the BCI system advancements, like the science, to a broader audience, because I think this is really important, that all these advances in science and as well in technology are not just staying in some closed circles like in academia, But we want to share this with the broader audience, especially with the youth. So we get a lot of, we work a lot with kids. Like we have workshops with them where they can try out BCI systems, they can develop robotic systems, they got introduced to the robotics as well. So here you can see the human interaction experiments that we are giving, like it's the Neuro Eva. Here you can control a small robot. Now we call her Eva because we don't want all the robots would be like just boys. Our is Eva, and we are giving her, making her also identity. And here you can interact with her with your brain waves only. And she's quite a star in Slovenia already. She's like performing with artists at tech conferences and like opening, she's giving the opening speeches at the conferences. And we also have the Yaskava robot, the industrial robot, where we are also demonstrating the industrial robot in a different maybe way, you know, not in the industrial, its nature habitat, but out of that. Like how could we also use like the industrial robots also in the rehabilitation, creative rehabilitation. For example, here you can see, because we developed like the system where you can paint with your brainwaves with the robot. And we also have like art residencies. Just recently, we were able to conduct one just before another lockdown, where here Varvara and Mar, they are like intermediate artists from Estonia, and they were very pleased to have the opportunity to work with the industrial robot, because for artists, it's still quite hard to get to know and to work with such technology. And they created bank installation. And they are actually also pointing out also warnings, you know, what could happen with such robots outside. So they are actually they put a gun on it, and they also use like the face tracking. So the robot is actually it's face tracking you. It's face tracking your face and pointing with the gun. For this, they were inspired also by the famous Nancy Sinatra song, Bang, Bang. I would like to invite you to participate at this year's SIGGRAPH Asia at Art Gallery, because one of the topics is also robots and humanity. And I am one of the, in the committee for this Art Gallery show. So we would be very happy to receive projects, proposals also from you. And I think it's my last slide. I think I was quite long. So I guess you have also lots of questions now.
Thank you so much, Maša. Oh, it looks like you can't see me. That's funny. Yeah. Let's see here. Okay, thank you. So unfortunately, Professor Vesna had to leave. She just left a couple of minutes ago. And we just have a couple more minutes, I think, for questions. I know there was a lot, so we probably won't have time to get to them all, but if you're willing, we could maybe send you our questions via email, and we can respond that way and close out the class. So thank you so much again. Let me see if I can scroll back to some of these questions. I'm not sure how many. So I guess a really good closing question would be kind of, you introduced all of this great news and really either exciting or scary or just really interesting news about kind of robotics and all of this. So what was the question? Oh gosh. So I guess one of the questions is how to make sense of all of this and kind of like what is a broader point that we can take away from it?
The broader point is like to also to you, you know, to be aware of how far the robotic research went, and not just the research in the laboratories, but now you can see how many of those robots is already among us. So it's not like you used to say the robots are coming, but they are already here. And not just in industry field, but also like social robots as well, humanoid robots. And to be also aware of the Android science, you know, because there is many platforms to investigate what human is. And one of the platforms is as well Android science, because one way, you know, it's also, if you want to learn about human, it's also you try to make a copy of it. And then when you can see how difficult that is, and you can also learn a lot from it, and you even appreciate more human life.
Great. Well, thank you so much again. It was really like filled with so much great information. I know all of the students really were very interested in this, and we were very excited to have you. So thank you again. Is it okay if I email you some of the further questions that we have?
Please do so. Yes, I will really be happy to answer the questions. I know it's a lot of information that you received right now. I know it's maybe hard to process right away.
It was great, really. It was really amazing. And thank you so much. So
thank you.
Thank you very much, Maša. That was a really great lecture.
Thank you.
Oh, and I was wondering if you could possibly share the
slides,
just so that we can have the reference for all the labs and the names for the scholars. I think that would be a great addition to the reference link for our students. Thank you.
I will send it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, you're getting lots of thank yous in the chat as well from everyone. So.
Okay, thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Have a nice day.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, thank you.
Recording stop.